That is a good cup of tea. Hello, everybody. All the bodies. A few months ago, I made a video about my experiences with lucid dreaming, which is something that I'm super interested in. And I always love the comments on videos like that because that kind of topic isn't something that usually comes up. Like, you might have had that chat with your friends, but so many people around you have all these weird stories about these kind of experiences. But because it just doesn't come up in conversation, you never find them out until someone sparks the conversation and you're like, oh, humans are weird. So obviously, lucid dreaming happens when you kind of separate your body from your mind, in a sense. And your mind is able to be fully active whilst your body remains asleep. So you can move without moving. So that's just dreaming, and that's not like specific to lucid dreaming. But an obvious side effect of having a brain that can do this is that sometimes you're going to do it involuntarily. And sometimes you're going to get stuck. And that is how you get sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis happens when your body's gone through the process of shutting down your muscles so that you don't act out your dreams, but your brain is fully awake. And not in a lucid dreaming sense, just like you're actually still awake, but your body is not. And this usually happens when you're just falling asleep, probably in those instances where you fall from being awake to in a quite deep REM sleep really quickly, or when you've been dreaming and you're just waking up. And I'm in the group of people that this usually happens when I'm falling asleep. So, not usually, like not every night, but I mean, when it happens when I'm falling asleep. And weirdly, actually, this has pretty much exclusively happened to me when there's someone else in the room. I don't know if there's a level of like, maybe the thing that prevents my brain from going into a fully sleep state is the fact that it's got an awareness of a presence of someone in the room. Because it would make sense if that was a defense mechanism at first, right? As in like to keep little humans safe, that if you sense the presence of someone else, you don't fully fall asleep. I mean, it's a flawed argument, I won't lie. For me, it always starts with that really relaxed state. You know, when the only people in the room are people that you really trust, and you can allow yourself to drift off as you hear their conversations, because you know that you're safe. You know they're not going to make fun of you. You know you're not going to wake up and they've drawn a willy on your face. I think there's something probably related to that feeling of safety that I have that allows me to go so quickly into like a deep sleep, body-wise. I guess that would make sense. And then suddenly something happens and my breathing shifts into that really deep, sleepy type of breathing. I don't know why I'm diagramming that to you. And then suddenly something changes. My breathing changes to what it's like when you're actually asleep. There's a really intense ringing in my ears. I'm falling, and sometimes I can feel the walls pulsating, just like I do when I'm starting to lucid dream. And then I'm stuck. I'm completely powerless to pull myself out of this state. It's just luck. Sometimes that's all I'm experiencing, and sometimes I have the full-on hallucinations that people associate with sleep paralysis. My sleep paralysis demon is my sleep paralysis demon. But sometimes I'm just trapped there in the dark, staring at the back of my eyelids. I can still feel the presence of whoever's in the room. I know where I am. I know what's going on, but I can't get out. So whenever there's someone next to me, I just have to concentrate all of my attention on desperately trying to move like a pinky at the side just to trap them and be like, please help me, I'm trapped in hell. Because usually once I've regained control of like a finger, the rest will start to follow and I can pull myself out of it. But until then, nah, hell. But hands down, right, my creepiest experience with sleep paralysis was when reality and my sleep paralysis experience merged. So I was sleeping at my granddad's house in Edinburgh, and I don't know if someone had died outside nearby, but right outside the window, and this was like 2 a.m, there were like at least 100 birds just circling the area. And they were definitely different types as well, because there were so many different squawks in there. It was like a horrible noise, but it was really hot. So I had to keep the window open. I was just starting to fall asleep, and then it happened, right? I fell into this sleep paralysis state. And basically, the sound of the birds that was outside turned into a sound that was produced by my sleep paralysis demon. This absolutely disgusting little creature. So the window was like one of those slide open ones, so it's probably about this wide. And this like spindly, creepy little creature crawls in through the window. And it's got like, it's really small, but it's also got really long, gangly legs. And it just creeps its way across the floor. And it climbs up onto the bed. And it just sits on me. And it just pushes into my chest. And it looked like, right, I know this is going to sound funny, but it wasn't. Like it is now, but it wasn't. It looked like a mix between the Dementors from the third Harry Potter film and Groot. Like it was flowy and spooky, but also kind of branchy. And it didn't really have very distinct facial features, but its face was long and very vividly looked a bit like Groot. So, and the noise from all the birds outside merged into my subconscious, and it was this creature that was making those horrible noises. When I was awake, it was pretty clear that there were individual squawks within the noise, but when I was in this sleep paralysis state, my brain was like merging them together. So it was just this really weird squawking sound, And as the creature crawled across the floor and came towards me, it got louder. Like my brain was making it seem like it genuinely was coming from the creature. And underneath that noise, there was also like a really intense, creepy, deep breathing coming from it, like the Dementors. But realistically, in hindsight, it was probably my own breathing being amplified by this fear state and whatever was going on. It creeps onto the bed, and it didn't even really have hands or feet, but it just had these like spindly little things, and it just pushed them onto my chest. It kind of felt like it was going through my chest a bit, just pushes it down and was like, you're not going to breathe now. And I was like, okay. And that's a really common hallucination for people in a sleep paralysis state. It's really, really common for people to visually see something sitting on their chest because it's like a physical manifestation of the feeling that you have. Essentially, you've been in a sort of sleepy state where your breathing is automatic. Now that you're awake, you're supposed to enter manual breathing mode, but you can't because all of the muscles in your body are paralyzed. So you're desperately trying to breathe, but you can't move your lungs. Move your lungs. I mean, you never move your lungs, do you? You can't move your chest muscles that cause you to inhale, obviously, is what I meant. And it's pretty obvious when you think about it. Like, the phone can ring or the doorbell can go while you're sleeping, and that can go into your dream. And because you're still in this half-dream state, it makes complete sense that, like, audio stuff can go in and mess with it. And because fundamentally your body is still asleep, you've got all the chemicals that you have when you're dreaming. And that's what makes it so intense, because just like a nightmare, you're not just seeing this stuff happen. You can feel it really deeply, but it was absolutely terrifying. And the whole thing probably only realistically went on for about 30 seconds, but it felt like it was about 5 to 10 minutes until finally mercy was granted and I was able to move again, and I darted awake so quickly, like Captain Jack every time he dies. Just frantically looking around the room like, what the fuck was that? But the scariest part about this one for me, other than the experience itself, was the fact that when I woke up, because the sound that the creature had been making was based on the sounds that were outside the window, when I woke up and came to and could see where I was and was like, oh, okay, cool, that was sleep paralysis. Because the sounds out the window were still happening, it still sounded like the creature was there, and I couldn't shake the image that it had just crawled out the window again and it was waiting to come back in. And then I just had to wait for all the masses and masses of adrenaline to leave my body so I could fall asleep again. But I think the most interesting thing about sleep paralysis for me is the weird similarities between so many different people's stories. And I don't just mean not being able to breathe or even a creature physically pushing on your chest, but there's a few random creatures that just seem to pop up in everybody's experiences, including the hag. Now, the hag is also just the name of any creature that you see while getting a sleep paralysis experience. But more specifically, when a sleep paralysis demon isn't on your chest, sometimes they're just standing at the bottom of your bed or in the doorway. And so many people specifically report that it looked like a creepy, really old witch-like woman, and then they can feel a really sinister vibe coming from them. Just like, you know, when you're in a dream and you sense the intent of all the characters that enter your dream and you really feel and connect to the emotions of the space. It's the same kind of thing. My little creepy branch guy came in and I knew he wasn't up to something good. And I always wonder how much of that is related to media that we consume that tells us what creepy things should look like, and how much of it is maybe something a little bit weirder. Because if I hadn't had that connection, I'd be like, oh, sorry, go about your day, sir, don't mind me. But that little sense, I knew something wasn't right. Interestingly, these weird, creepy little creatures of all varieties used to be called nightmares before the word nightmare developed into what we now use it for today, of just a creepy, scary dream. And this whole phenomenon is probably responsible for loads and loads of historical accounts of, like, hauntings or people being possessed by a demon, because it would all have just come from people who didn't have the knowledge to make sense of what had happened to them. I cannot tell you how thankful I am that I had heard of sleep paralysis before it happened to me. My God. A little moment of silence for all of you guys out there who have had sleep paralysis at a time when you had no idea what was going on. That sounds like the single scariest experience I could ever have. I am so sorry. Because for me, every time I've had it, even though I'm still fully immersed in the absolute terror of it, I sometimes can clock and be like, this is sleep paralysis. And I think sometimes that's stopped hallucinations from happening because I've already been able to rationalize about what's happening to me. I'm not stuck in this terror state where I'm really susceptible to things. And then even more valuably, when I woke up, instead of being like, oh my God, what just happened to me, and racking my brains trying to work stuff out, I was always just able to be like, oh shit, that was sleep paralysis. That was horrible, but at least I'm not going to die. So I never had any negative association or worry of haunting from the room that I was in. I did get quite nervous about falling asleep for a period of like 4 to 6 months after it had happened a few times in a row, quite close together. But generally, although it terrified me to my very core at the time, I was never super freaked out by it in daily life. Just like when you have a really horrific nightmare and when you wake up from it, you're so connected to the emotions of the dream that you're like, oh my God, that was life altering. And then by the end of the week, it's something that you can recall objectively and remember the fear that you were in theory, but you can't really connect to it in the same way. But yeah, thankfully, most of my other experiences with sleep paralysis have been quite boring compared to that. And also, anytime you experience something like this, as soon as you say it out loud to other people, it never quite sounds as creepy as it was at the time. But I can assure you, it was fucked up. I find the weird shit that our brains get up to very, very interesting. So if you have any weird and wonderful stories about sleep paralysis, please share them with me. Sometimes it's reassuring to read someone else's comment and be like, my imagination isn't that messed up. Thank you. I hope you're having a nice day. I hope you don't get sleep paralysis tonight. And if you do, rest in peace.